Okay, this lecture is going to cover the very subtle principle of proportion. And at the end, kind of a little touch on scale as well, because I find them pretty related. So this is a picture of a ceramic hand. It looks like wood, and this is something we call trompe l'oeil, in French meaning fool the eye. So it's taking one material and making it look like another material. So you're fooling the eye into people thinking that that's actually wood, when in fact the hand is clay. And so the hand looks great as far as the proportions, right? Looks like a human hand should look size-wise. But also, if you notice right in the center there is a little ruin of a brick hearth. It's probably hard to see, but this is a fireplace right here. And so this also is a good example of scale. And in this case, the scale is miniature. Scale is the size of one thing in relationship to the things around it. Oftentimes it's in relation to a human. So if you were talking about this, boy, I'm going to make a wild guess and all you mathematicians are going to go crazy, but that's probably one as in the human, 1 to 100 and maybe 100. I don't know, maybe 90. I don't know, I'm bad at this. A 90th, of a human. Easier if we work in bigger things, but you get the idea. It's very tiny. And scale is often a ratio. So we've got proportion and scale right here. So I would say that most artists make their work pretty much intuitively how things look. That's not all the times true, but in the end, you kind of are going to look at something and go, okay, that looks right to me. And, and maybe it's mathematically correct, maybe it isn't. But you can approach the principle of proportion mathematically. And this is the golden section or the golden mean or the golden ratio. And it supposedly was used by, well, here's another picture of it. And those of you math people, the Fibonacci sequence, I mean, it has a pattern, it has a system, a mathematical system. They have attributed the golden ratio to the Parthenon in Greece. And there you can see that same setup there, that same mathematical grid work that has that Fibonacci sequence of getting bigger and bigger and bigger exponentially by, I think, adding the number in the next number in sequence or something like that. And here's the Parthenon itself, which many people feel is one of the most beautiful buildings on Earth, and it probably is. I think the Greeks started studying this because they kept seeing the same ratio, the same sequence in nature. So it's that same ratio that we see in this fern, shells, sunflowers, some kind of succulent. It shows up in nature, and I think people went, aha, this is, yes, the golden mean, the golden ratio. This is the stairway in the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. They, artists, architects have used this same sequence because they think it is the perfect, most beautiful ratio. And here it is, a cross-section of a nautilus shell. If we went back a little bit, just to make life real easy for the non-mathematical, if you'll see here, it's oftentimes seen as sort of like 2/3 of a form, or 2/3 of a bulk. It's very easy to see when you're looking at a frame in a two-dimensional picture platform there. It's about 2/3. So it's something to keep in mind if you're, you know, building something, when you're looking, front onto a sculpture. I mean, maybe when you pick the view that you think is the optimal view or something like that, you may think about that, where to place the head of something, where to place the focal point of something. You might want to pick it at that kind of 2/3 spot. So 2/3 up, and then supposedly 2/3 in, and then 2/3 again and again, and you end up on the end of her nose. So I don't really know whether I would attribute the golden mean to every one of the things that people are trying to make it fit to, but it is interesting, but I don't know if it's really true. And here's somebody taking it to the nth degree. Here is a furniture designer, and instead of trying to just use the golden mean as proportions, they actually made that the size of the chair. Okay, so back to, it's sort of a sense, it's sort of an intuitive thing. And a lot of people think that this lamp by the Italian designer Magistretti, it's called the Atolo lamp. And people just think that it is, it is beautiful because it has got perfect proportion. Now, could we lay that golden ratio over the top of it? I don't know. It doesn't really look like that would work there, but maybe it does. But a lot of people feel that it's just right. It is a beautiful proportion. So then we're going to throw it over to another part of the world with a different sort of cultural base, and that would be the Zen rock gardens in Japan, which to the designers of these gardens, they do it very much. Well, I don't know whether it's mathematical or whether it's intuitive, but I know they are laid out in a certain way that, the height of the wall behind it has to be a certain size, the size of the sand area in relation to other parts, the heights of the rocks have mathematical relations. The Zen monks are responsible for this. The width of the furrows in the raking, which is supposed to be thought of as kind of mimicking water, waves in water, and possibly sometimes these are seen as islands or boats or some other items. The proportions of the circles, the raking goes around these protrusions of rocks, etc. And, there's always a tallest one, and then there are mathematical proportions of how high these things should be. Anyway, also the distance of the viewer. There is supposedly a place, often on a little overlook, a little veranda on the monks' quarters, where you're supposed to sit and view this thing and see all of its perfection of proportion. And supposedly, when all those parts are in perfect relationship, you're supposed to get a real sense of great peace, that everything is in balance. It's kind of a meditation thing. And if one thing were out of place, it would be spoiled. Something kind of beautiful about that. Whoopsie. Okay, so let's look at some things that are maybe people stretching the proportion a little bit on purpose because intuitively it works for them, or that it is a stylistic choice, or it's for humor, or perhaps a political statement, whatever it may be. You can use any of these elements or principles and push them in such a way that maybe you get a humorous effect, or you are doing it on purpose, that there's some discomfort with the way it's used, perhaps. Anyway, when I first saw this, it's a Mayan chocolate bowl, which I find everything about it to be wonderfully delightful. And yet, when I look at it as somebody who makes pots and works with clay, I think, oh my goodness, that handle is outrageous. We would never put a handle that big on there. But it just makes perfect sense to me in a way. And then if you look at it a little bit longer, you'll see that this oval down here is kind of picked up in the same implied oval up there. I don't know, it just works. There's a perfection about it to me. This is Modigliani, a Italian, or maybe he's Swiss Italian, I'm not really sure, sculptor who was obviously influenced by African masks and purposely made the proportions on this face very exaggerated. I find it delightful and wonderful, and I love to see his pieces. It works for me. Other people may think it's just freaky. This is a piece called Black Goddess, and the creator of this made these proportions. I don't know, it looks like some weird racist thing about Black women, but anyway, it's kind of humorous, and I don't know what the intent was, but there again, using proportion to make some sort of statement. Caricatures often take a regular person's proportions and exaggerate some of them if they find that they're slightly larger than the norm or whatever, or something that would make them so characteristic that you would pretty much know who it was by the exaggeration and find it humorous. And this is always interesting. So here you've got the actor Mel Gibson. Here is somebody's beginning portrait of Mel Gibson, giving him weird, exaggerated eyes, like a baby's or oversized. And this person, I thought this was pretty fun. Somebody took this and then put these exaggerations on Mel Gibson's face. Anyway, you can see how art instructors could go nuts, right? When you keep seeing people overdo certain proportions. So that's why art teachers hand out little designs like this that show the human head. And I think I included this on the page with one of your long hands-on projects, the Long Hop, that has to do with making a realistic human face. So just as a hint there, see that the top part is a circle, the lower part is this crescent moon. There are certain distances, like the middle of the eye to the outer part of the mouth, the inner part of the eye and the end of the brow that comes down and meets the outside of the nose. These are all generalities, but the eyes are in the center. The nose, well, this one's a little different. Oftentimes they put the nose halfway between the eyes and the chin, and then the mouth, I don't know, where the ears come, etc. I mean, you're going to find all kinds of directions that way, and they're a good thing to look at. In the end, if you make that face or ever make a face, in the end, you're going to finish it intuitively, the way you want, the way you feel is right. This is another humorous one. Here's a Barbie over here, And this is what a Barbie doll would look like if they had more normal, average proportions. Pretty humorous. So here we are looking at scale, how things measure up to a human. So we've moved out of proportion, and now we're moving in, just looking at scale a little bit. Some more things of large scale, which we've looked at before, the Claes Oldenburg, the clothespin, etc. This is a Jeff Koons balloon dog. This is a funny thing. I think this is in the Philippines, just sort of an ironic, oversized water faucet spigot. I wanted to show you, though, how sometimes we use scale when we make art. And this is the studio of an artist called Beth Kavanagh. And she makes these really larger than life, larger scale, but not monumental like the Oldenburg pieces, animals. So she may make this little one down here. And then she takes a picture of it, creates an image of it in the scale that she wants, grids it out, puts it up on the wall, and then builds these armatures, right? The armature is the inside structure. I think we talked about that a little bit before. She builds the armature, looking at the piece behind it. And then she, or for the most part, she's famous enough that she's got workers that come in here and would probably be building up that animal. She maybe comes in at the end and makes all her very well-known swirls of clay that looks like beautiful chocolate frosting there. But anyway, using something, they make a small scale item, it's blown up and then made into a larger form. And this can probably be done very easily also. I know it can be done with a 3D printer. You just put it in what you want the scale to be, upscaling or downscaling. Here's one of her pieces when it's finished. They're really interesting. Animals representing human relationships, obviously. Well, not obviously, but they do. These are handmade maquettes of, I don't know what. Some of you may recognize what these guys are, some kind of warriors of some sort. I don't know whether they're supposed to be human or not, but anyway, small scale maquettes for maybe something larger in a film, or I don't really know. Sometimes people make things on a small scale also as the finished product. Like in this case, this is a Japanese, it's called a netsuke. It's a skeleton playing a drum from the 18th century. It's made from a seed. They're often made of ivory or bone or wood or seeds, some beautiful material. And they're actually used, they're little miniature exquisite sculptures used as like a fob to hold a cord where you would attach your medicine box or whatever it might be. So this is a common way in the Japanese culture, older Japanese culture, that they would hold things. They didn't particularly have pockets like we do, but you'd have this little netsuke, and it would be attached to a cord here that holds, in this case, their medicine box, whatever is in there. And stuck behind your obi or belt. This artist makes these miniature kind of building and environment, neighborhood sorts of things. And then takes pictures of them. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't really recognized his work, but extreme attention to detail to make this scaled down tenement building or kind of a funny apartment building in the Asian part of town, in Asia itself, something like that, with the little corner store down below or the chow mein shop. Anyway, some people do like working in miniature. It's just sort of fun. People find small things very precious. And of course, the whole making of jewelry, which you are working on a small scale, but with oftentimes really beautiful and valuable materials, but on a miniature scale. And here's another one. This is sort of a funny ring with a car and a giraffe, and I don't know what else is going on here. But there again, if you're one of those people that really likes to make little tiny, exquisite, perfect things, jewelry might be your thing. Okay, so yeah, just remember about if you're choosing to do that ceramic face, you want to remember proportion and the scale. The way I am seeing the scale is 1:1, that you're trying to make it human size, as in particularly your size, because you can take the measurements right there. Or maybe you're using your daughter or your husband or whoever it might be. All right, we'll go forward.